Hello, I'm Dr. Thomas Barnes, Newport Beach cosmetic surgeon for more than 17 years. As a physician, I'm interested in all areas of medicine just like many other doctors are. On Expert Voices, we're going to have cutting-edge leading experts in all areas of medicine who are going to share their secrets with you on how you can lead a better life. I hope you enjoy this episode of Expert Voices.
Orange County Registered Digital.
Chronic health conditions can be debilitating. Living with such ailments such as thyroid gland disease, diabetes, or autoimmune conditions are often failed by traditional medical models and alternative medicine too. Some doctors are using both functional neurology and medicine to work with those suffering with chronic health conditions. Joining me today is Dr. Corey King, the owner and clinical director for the Tustin Chronic Conditions Center. Dr. Corey King, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Barnes. Pleasure to be here.
You know, we're going to talk about some really exciting stuff and personal stories. He has personal stories for how he got into this kind of medicine, which will blow your mind. My first question, why are traditional methods and many alternative methods failing people with chronic conditions today?
Well, I wouldn't say that traditional medicine is failing everybody, but I would say when it comes to the chronic patient population, that's where they're really dropping the ball. And for our patients that we see in the clinic, they've been through this medical merry-go-round of the medications and the surgeries, and they're still struggling with their health symptoms. For example, thyroid patients. 90% of thyroid patients are misdiagnosed. I mean, 90%. And 90% of them have an autoimmune condition, but their doctors aren't running the right laboratory test, and it really doesn't matter because they're still going to give them the same medication for their thyroid, but they're not going to do a bit of good for their autoimmune condition that's actually attacking their thyroid.
That sounds very scientific, but I want to share a story with Dr. King personally. His own father had a thyroid condition.
My father had throat cancer, and during the radiation process, he actually destroyed his thyroid gland, but they never told him. And he was getting out of his plane one day. This is when he went back to work. He was getting out of his plane and he collapsed. So instantly we thought the cancer had come back. But in reality, all that happened was he didn't have any thyroid hormones in his system.
How does functional neurology, which is really your area, how does that work in concert with traditional and the alternative methods with your particular approach?
Functional neurology, the best way to describe it is think of a car, and we'll use the car analogy. If your oil is bad long enough, what happens to the motor? And we all know that the motor is going to start to break down prematurely. Well, if the motor breaks down prematurely, that's what's controlling things like gut function and stomach function and even your thyroid. So what we have to do is we have to look at the car's oil and we have to look at the car's motor, and we clean up the oil and we tune up the motor at the same time, and we do that with functional neurology.
So you see a lot of people with, well, common names today are functional bowel syndrome. What are some of the other things that you see like that?
We work with Hashimoto's patients, a lot of diabetic patients, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, leaky gut syndrome, intestinal permeability, because I grew up with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about a little while ago. And I think that fascinates me because many of us doctors who go into medicine have a similar story that directed us. And now you're actually able to help people with same or similar conditions.
Correct. I can put myself in their shoes. And I can say, I know what you're going through, and we know the steps that you need to take in order to get yourself better. Now,
you mentioned something about the gut, and I'm going to throw out the immune system again. Now, the gut is really responsible for a lot of the function of the immune system, folks. And if your immune system is not doing its job, the whole environment can take you over, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us about immune system, the gut, how that works into gut or bowel issues.
I have a favorite saying, and my saying is if you have a fire in the gut, you have a fire in the brain, because a lot of these patients come in, they say, well, Dr. King, I'm suffering with brain fog, and I'm losing my memory. If we have anything going on within the intestinal tract, that's 80% of the immune system. So if your GI system isn't working well, you can't heal. And you don't always have these major chronic issues like constipation and diarrhea. We had a patient come in and she goes, I have a little bit of bloatiness, Dr. King, and I think it's avocados. Well, we ran a stool test and found out she had 3 parasites and 2 bacteriums. So if we didn't eradicate those little critters, we wouldn't allow her body to heal.
Well, that's a good point. So you're doing alternative approaches, but at the same time you're getting into traditional medicine so you won't overlook anything.
Correct. We've got to cover all the bases. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. If we see all the pieces and we can complete the picture, then we can help the patient achieve their health goals.
Well, tell me more about some of the other conditions in neurology that you treat.
With a lot of our patients, I'm going to say 75% of our patients are thyroid patients. And so those patients are having fatigue, they're having loss of libido, they're losing their hair, they're not sleeping very well. So we actually get in there and say, okay, what's driving this? We figure out what the triggers are that's driving these conditions. And once we can figure out those triggers, we can help educate the patients on how to get over those and how to allow the body to heal.
What would you say to people watching, specific concerns they might have for which they could benefit by coming to your advanced practice?
The biggest thing we see with our patients is they're coming to us and they're saying, Dr. King, I've been seeing these doctors and I've been on medications, but I'm still having symptoms. And we're telling them something is missing. They're missing a piece of the puzzle. And a lot of times it's because in the medical model, it doesn't matter what the laboratory test tells the doctor. If it's an autoimmune condition, they're still going to give the medication because that's their area of training. We can't fault them in that. But in our area, we're saying, well, it might not be the medication. Maybe let's look at some of the other causes and fix those. And maybe you can decrease some of your medications or come off some of them if you can. But there's a time and place for medication and surgery, but there's also a time and place for looking at the true root cause and seeing how we can get to the bottom of it.
Now, it's interesting that we were talking right before our interview because we've never met before, and it seems as though we both have a mutual friend, Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins, Personal Power. I knew him a little bit more before you, and you met him more recently. And you were just down in Fiji with Tony, and a challenge happened for you. Would you like to tell us about the accident?
We were in Fiji visiting Tony Robbins, and it was the last day, and I was in a taxi cab and headed to the airport to come home, and a car hit us head on. And I broke my neck in 4 spots and split the forehead open. And we were pretty lucky in that accident. And it's a matter of allowing the body to heal. I had a goal, and my goal was, okay, we broke the neck, what are we going to do? And my goal was to start racing triathlons. And I grew up as a motorcycle racer and as a cyclist, and I said, when I get over this neck injury, I'm going to race triathlons. I've hated swimming. I've had 6 surgeries on each ankle, so I couldn't run, but those were excuses. And I said, well, let's heal the body and let's do everything we can, every measure that we can in order to allow my body to heal and see where it goes from there. So now we qualified for the national championships this year in triathlon in my age group.
He has touched on so many fascinating topics, and he shared his personal background medically, which in my opinion makes anybody who works with patients a better practitioner if they can sympathize like this. And there's so much information. Where can people get more information? You have a website, yes?
We have several websites, but our main one is called the TustinChronicConditionCenter.com. So that's just TustinChronicConditionCenter.com, and they can learn more about what we do. We have a ton of video testimonials on the site of patients sharing their stories, so they get to listen to other people basically say what they're suffering from.
Well, this has been a wonderful interview. I've learned a lot. It's been enjoyable. Thank you so much for sharing your professional and your personal stories, Dr. Corey King.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, advanced medical approaches, such as those found at the Tustin Chronic Conditions Center, are often turned to later rather than sooner. Using specific neurological rehabilitation and metabolic workups, patients can be given the right diagnostic evaluations and successful treatments begun. That's why you should call the Tustin Chronic Conditions Center. Get more information at 714-731-7680 or visit their website at www.tustinchronicconditioncenter.com.